First item on the agenda is the agenda and any announcements. Approval of the agenda and announcements. Do we have any announcements? Do we need to modify the agenda at all? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as written for June 12th, 2025? We have a motion.
And a second from Dan.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for May 2025. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Aaron.
We have a second?
I'll second again, John.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of May 2025, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We'll now open the floor for public comment. Right, we do not have any public comment today. So the next item on the agenda is the health insurance rate update. And I'll turn it over to you, Tim and Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is not my favorite update, but one that I wanted to start the conversation with you sooner rather than later. We have been working with VHI over the past couple months as they put their rate need together for the under 65 plans and for our VSTRS 65 medical only that allows for pairing with a drug plan. And in the memo I sent you, you can see that the rate increases proposed are substantial. They're not out of line with what we are seeing generally across the state as the costs of healthcare just continue to spiral. But certainly a real cause for concern. My hope at this point is that these rates are going to slightly come down. The legislature has taken a couple actions this session, specifically, and to the extent there are questions about this, I'll certainly turn it over to Steve, but specifically around some outpatient drug costs. And I know the Green Mountain Care Board is also taking a bit more of an aggressive posture with respect to hospital costs. These things are likely to make their way into the filing before DFR as an amendment. So what the typical path is, VHI has to make its filing. They make it based on what they know now as projected out to the start of the calendar year. And then once hospital budgets get filed, they have been we've been in the pattern of having them do an update so that what is a projection that they have right now can be a little bit more firmed up. Given what's happened at the legislature and in our discussions with VHI and Blue Cross, they do expect that there's a strong likelihood that that could come down, the rate need, but we really just don't know that now. And Steve, I think is it July 1 that we get insight into that? Is that when those filings are made? Sometime in July.
In July, yeah.
Yeah. There is, however, one lever that we can pull, and that's what I really wanted to talk to folks about today. As you know, GLP-1 pharmaceuticals like Ozempic have increased substantially in popularity in recent years. They are used to treat diabetes and obesity. And plans are moving towards continuing coverage for diabetes, but suspending coverage of those drugs for obesity. So, and I'm going to look to Steve here for confirmation. The VBA plans cover these drugs for diabetes, but not obesity. And VHI is currently proposing for its active plans to suspend the coverage of these drugs for obesity and maintain it for diabetes. What we asked them, well, what does that mean for us, right? If we were to go down this road and make this exclusion, what kind of savings are we looking at? And it's approximately 3%. So while it doesn't solve the rate pressure that we're seeing this year, 3% is not nothing, I think, in the scope of this, and it's not something to not discuss. So we wanted to bring this to you, and I think as staff, we see a lot of value in aligning our plans so that teachers in their active years, pre-Medicare retirement and Medicare retirement, have a roughly consistent benefit package. And given the rate pressure and associated savings this year, we do think it makes sense to move forward with this suspension. VHI is advocating the same to its board at its June meeting, which I believe is next week. And so you saw, I put as an appendix some of the information, the information they provided to their board last month that they've been doing this discussion. So I guess I just wanted to put that out there for now and kind of see what people thought about it. Bigger, stepping back from a bigger perspective, we have one more year on this existing contract, right? We have one more 1-year extension with VHI and with VBA. And so we do plan this year to go out, and start working towards a full RFP. But we are cognizant of the challenges that are sort of writ large across the state that we're not immune from. And so trying to do our level best for this year while, kind of planning for the future. Maybe I'll take a pause there and see if folks have any questions, how this information sits.
Ben?
Well, this may be kind of a naive question. And I guess that's, one of the reasons I've heard proponents of, I don't know, these kind of drugs advocate for broader adoption is that, or broader use, despite the extremely high cost, is that sort of that preventative, prevents complications down the road. And I'm assuming one of those major complications is probably diabetes, and then leading on to other, I don't know. It's just, I guess I'm trying to figure out like what, if those proponents are indeed right, are we that, that obesity will then lead to higher and higher costs by covering diabetes? Are we sort of catching it in time, catching this, I don't know, progression of health negatives sort of in a timely way? Or, I mean, I'm sure you've thought about it. I just don't know how. I'm supportive of whatever we do. I just not really a medical expert, so trying to understand how it fits in with the cost benefit of limiting it to diabetes.
Maybe, Steve, I'm going to ask you to comment on this in 1 second, but what I do think might be important is to sort of level set on the current costs of the coverage for existing claimants. So we asked our providers, okay, well, what are the costs here? Past couple of years, what are we looking at? And one of the things we're seeing is a dramatic increase. So, in 23, we had 13 claimants with allowed claims of 93,000. In 24, we had 35 claimants with allowed claims of 230,000. And as of early May, we have 41 claimants in 25 already at 185,000. So So I think you have a really good question. I want Steve to
$500,000.
talk to
Yeah.
that, but I also wanted to note the sort of this kind of trajectory that we're on. So Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'll annualize that number of 185 to 500,000. So last year was 231 with 35. We have 6 more people taking it, and it's going to rise to 500,000 annually if you take that number and annualize it. So that's why the pause. The key thing to keep in mind, and Dan, your question does recognize that, is that this is not a change for those that have diabetes. These drugs will be available for them. We have to remember too that all these drugs that, well, a lot of these drugs that we're seeing for obesity and weight loss, non-diabetics, these drugs have been around for a long time. It's only within these last couple of years that we've seen the trajectory take off because they've been designer weight loss. Now, the programs that Blue Cross have in place don't just allow me to go because I have my 40th high school reunion coming up and I need to, slim down a little bit. You do have to go through protocol and you have to have a certain BPI and all that kind of. There are protocols to control it, but still, with this cost, it's running out of control and it's driving a significant cost. 3% on your full dollar, it's a lot of money. So it's a pause right now. What we're also seeing with this is these drugs are being tested for other things, and you may have heard heart disease, some issues with the brain are coming out, and also they're working on creating a pill. This 500,000, these are all injectables. If this becomes a pill and we have it covered, that 500,000 could be 2.5 times the cost within a couple months. The cost of this is the miracle people have been working for. Take a pill, lose weight, everybody's happy. So we also want to kind of understand what the market is doing and where it's going. Medicare was going to implement it and they pulled back on it for the exact same reason, like this cost is greater than it should be. So yeah, we're aware of it and we're tracking it for this reason. We do see, and you can see it's a steep curve that we're seeing in the cost increases.
Thank you. I understand the picture. Yeah.
So one other thing, just so folks understand sort of things we've been looking at, and this is ultimately not something we're going to recommend here, but we as we were looking at what options we could bring to the board to, anything that we could do on our own to try and mitigate some of these substantial cost increases, we actually had Blue Cross price us whole different plan designs. So plans that would mimic the active teacher coverage, less the HRA that active teachers have. So, what would a design that a teacher is used to having right now, what would that cost us? And we would see some savings, Steve, I'm recalling in the 4 to 6% range, but nothing on some level, it's going to whole new plan designs. That's a major impact, that, it changes the entire feel of the plans. Benefits, have to be carefully contrasted so that we could explain it to teachers. That's a huge lift. So when we looked at that, we thought, okay, 4 to 6%, but substantial disruption and lifts. That did not feel like something that we wanted to bring seriously to the board in the same way that this proposal, which has a relatively, substantial for those few people that are on it, but otherwise it's not as broad and systemic a disruption. It seems like this change packed a lot of punch for a relatively small disruption, and that's why we wanted to bring it to you for consideration.
Can I just add a statement on the plan design?
Please.
The proposal and the way we were looking at it was not to replace the plans that are there, but it was to add and provide potential for cost savings for an employee who wanted something like that, or a retiree who wanted something like that, and for you, the board, and the cost going out. But it's only 4 to 6 for anybody that changes. So it'd be a small percentage too. It's the same big communications lift that Tim is recognizing, but you'd get 4 to 6% for some 3% to move. So the bang for the buck for the plan design without a total replacement, don't expect that that means, oh, well, we're giving up on a 4% savings. It's only 4% for those that move, and that would likely be a small percentage.
And the reality, it would be really 1 year. I mean, because you don't know, again, because of usage, that fine, we offer another plan, 3% move over, those people make a savings, and then we see next year the premiums will be more or less in line depending on usage. There's no guarantee that when you move something like that, it's like, oh, I'm here, it's going to be forever.
The cost curve
So-
is bent. It's not
Yeah.
downward, and it's not totally stemmed. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it really, as a board, I think we have done an excellent job over the years here in terms of funding all the plans, making sure the premiums are being applied appropriately across all the different pre-65 and over 65. So I think that was a good call. I think that that's appropriate for us not to offer something like this. And then the fact that we can see one specific item, and industry is going this way with the GLP-1s, that the pharmaceutical industry has to, stop being greedy and start bringing the cost down for these kind of things, and get a generic. But so personally, I think this is an appropriate way to go forward to help. I hate seeing it. We got 40 people, but that, as we already talked, my God, if this comes out in pill form, and then every commercial on CNN will be telling you this is the best thing. It's just, and it, for members, it's free because it would be part of the benefits. It's potential really killing us. Other thoughts or questions? So at this point, I think it would be appropriate. Tim, do you have a motion that
Yes,
you could share with us?
if folks are interested, we do. And what we would do is, if this passes, just so folks understand, we would communicate this to VHI, who would then amend their filing to reflect these drugs not being covered for this purpose. With I think it's like 2.9 or 3% is depending on the plan. It's different amounts for each plan, but it's right there at approximately 3% savings. And I don't want to offer this right now because we just lost our quorum. There he is. All right.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. Did I miss the motion?
No, not at all. No,
Okay, my apologies.
you're good.
Yeah, so the motion for consideration would be to suspend coverage of GLP-1 pharmaceuticals for obesity in Vista's under 65 insurance plans administered by VHI effective January 1, 2026, in order to achieve premium savings of approximately 3% for those plans in calendar year 26.
Kevin,
I'll make that motion.
do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
All right. Well, thank you. We will communicate that to VHI, and I think just be ready for updates throughout the summer on our health insurance situation. Hopefully we'll be coming to you with some better news once some of these actions of the legislature and the Green Mountain Care Board take hold. But we will also be receiving, hopefully within the next couple weeks, our contract requires it by July 1st, a proposed renewal from VBA. So that one is not ready to go yet, but we will be discussing these with you as they come in. But it's starting, in April, May, this is when we kind of ramp up on this conversation. So we can have a lead out to our open season in the fall, and then obviously new rates in effect January 1.
Yeah, with this motion, the other part of this that makes me feel I'm not comfortable when we do these kinds of things. It always worries me when, we have people that are using a certain prescription and then it's not being offered. But I think as you said, Tim, earlier, the fact that we maintain similarity throughout all the programs, active teachers, retired teachers, is for me, I think, an important aspect for plan design.
I agree. And, you can think about a scenario. Was it you that suggested this to me when we were talking about it, John, where someone potentially could retire earlier if this were available in the pre-Medicare retiree plan? So you could see a scenario where someone could, have a negative impact on our pensions because they're retiring earlier than they would want to, solely for the purpose of a unique coverage that we have in these plans, and then that would evaporate once that person turns Medicare age. When I think about it, it's no way to run a railroad, right? To have
No.
those kind of weird coverage anomalies driving actual experience in our for our educators.
Yeah.
You'd rather have a consistent message going across so folks can kind of plan more diligently.
Absolutely. All righty. Next item on the agenda, the Acrisure contract extension.
Steve, are you staying or are you heading?
You tell me. It sounds like I
Oh,
shouldn't be here for that discussion about
Either way, but well, I'll catch up with you later. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank
Thank
you
you,
very
Steve.
much. Take care. If there are any questions following, just reach out, Tim. That's how that'll go, I'm sure.
Will do.
Thank you.
So quickly, before we do the contract, was Hickok and Boardman bought out?
Yeah, Acrisure has taken over Hickok and Boardman, so the whole practice moved over into Acrisure.
Okay.
So we are recommending that we extend this contract for another year. Justin, correct me. I think we have 2 more years
Yes.
with Steve, and I think our practice has generally been to kind of take those at year chunks. And so we would recommend doing so again here. I think just for the board's backgrounds, these contracts are at a set rate per year. And the theory of these, when we contract, at least as we have been doing it for years with Hickok and Boardman and now Acrisure, is that we pay a set amount each year. Some years, like when we have a RFP, that means a heck of a lot more work. And other years, it's a little less. We're coming into a year where we're planning on doing an RFP. So I think this is the year when we really get the best bang for our buck working with Steve, and the rate is going to stay consistent. So we think it's a really smart value to continue this contract. And we think that, Steve before and the folks who worked for us before him has provided really important insight to us so that we can manage these plans with some insight into the industry. Absent this, we really are a little blind. So We certainly would recommend that the board approve the 1-year contract extension with Acrisure as presented.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Dan seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor of extending the contract for Acrisure, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Election update and appointment of alternate member.
And I think I should have said declaration of alternate member as we consulted our rules just before this. But the we, as we discussed in the past couple meetings, we have the elections for one of the active seats and for the alternate employee seat. We put out our nomination requests, and we do have an election going on right now for the active member. There are 2 folks vying for that position. And ballots are starting to roll in, and they will be finally, our due date is June 25th, right, Bill? June 25th, I believe. So we're moving forward on those. But per our rules, we only had one person apply for the alternate position, and that is Genevieve. So in that case, per the rules that were adopted, the board declares that individual to be the member in that seat. So we have typically done that through a motion just to formalize it and memorialize it. So we would recommend to the board that, having received only one nominee for the position of active member alternate representative, that the board move to declare Genevieve Hamby as the active member alternate representative for the July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2029 term on the Visitors Board.
Someone like to make the motion?
Make
Gavin?
that motion.
Aaron seconds. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have an alternate.
All right. And we will have some counting to do later in June.
It's been quite a while since we've had a contested election.
It will be.
Oh no, maybe the last one. No, last one. We did because Sandra. Justin was before Sandra, so we had 2 or 3 candidates last time. All right. Next item on the agenda. Any other business to come before the board?
If I could just take 1 minute and let the
Absolutely.
board know, I'm going to share my screen briefly because I am really excited that hopefully either later this week or next week, we are going to be putting out a retiring times. We haven't done this in a while. And so we have a team now working on this in our front office under the leadership of Krista Franks. And they have just done a fantastic job. We also have someone who works in our over in the front office wing of the treasurer's office, David Cunin, who does some really great design work. He does a lot of comms for our office. So we now will have a retiring times coming out, and what you'll see in it, we'll make sure that it gets blasted out. It's going to get blasted out to all retirees who we have email addresses for,
Excellent.
and we'll get it out to the board as well. But we have a message from Mike, talking about some of the work we did to show the savings of Act 114 and our funding progress. I wrote a little memo kind of talking about a really interesting piece that NERS puts out, Pensionomics, on the economic driver that is our pension systems across Vermont, and how that money gets reinvested in Vermont in a really economic, productive way. So so often people think about these plans as a resource drain, but there's actually these are economic multipliers in our communities, and it's spread all across the state. So I had a lot of fun working on that and Bill helped me a lot with representing that map. And then we just have a lot of updates about our staff, some frequently asked questions. We took a moment to do a little bragging, I think, about a lot of the good work our office does, whether that's in the Penguin Plunge. You got that's Justin there in the sporting the flannel and orange hat, doing some wood stacking for Lamoille County families who need help with wood, and we have a whole Christmas drive. So we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of highlight some of the things we've been doing on that front. And then we always like to remind people about Member Direct, and we couldn't resist, and I think we want to do a retiree spotlight. We started with one of our own dear friends who worked in our office, Leston Madison. Got a picture of her going out on a day of falconing, and just wanted to highlight some of her tips as, after counseling people for years, heading into retirement as a recent retiree herself. Incredibly proud of the work of the team on this. And so, we'll send it around, and I just wanted folks to be aware of it. I do see Nicole with her hand up.
I just wanted to let everyone know that the plan is to have this posted by tomorrow.
Oh, great.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is fantastic. This has been, when we went from paper to electronic version, it sort of drifted into no man's land, and I know that you didn't have staff to do it, and that looks fabulous. Thank you. Please say thank you to all the folks involved with this. That just can't say enough. And the fact that you can shoot it out if you have email addresses, it's going to go in electronically. That's fantastic. I didn't think I was going to be on the board long enough to see that happen. So,
I felt like we kind of took a couple fits and starts with it, but recently decided to hold off till we really had, a team we could put in place and a process. And that's one thing I think our team really excels on. Once we have a minute to breathe, establish a process, identify a team, and then we can, I think, deliver a really high quality product rather than try and do it, catch as catch can. And so I'm just really grateful for all the work that the team's put into it. And on that communications front, we also are moving to design. We had a lot of time, given the complexity of our plans, on our brochures that we started talking about in the fall. We've been going back and forth just in the substance piece while it was, a Word doc, just to make sure that it was accurate and, appropriate. And John, I know you've seen a draft of that in Word form. I was just communicating with the designers today. I expect within the next week or two, we'll see our first layout draft. So this summer, I think we're going to have a solid, for the first time ever, nice, about, what is it? Something like 16, 20 page document that gives, what we're trying to go for is just right. We don't want to send out the whole statute to everyone to kill them with complexity. And we don't want to just have the, one paragraph. So we're trying to get just right of a plan summary. And again, really grateful for everyone's help with that one. So those are just a couple of things to look out for this summer.
excellent. Thank you. We
Yeah,
just
it's
look
fun.
forward to it. Yeah. Any other announcements or business before the board? I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Gavin,
Oh, well, second, Dan.
motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Aaron, good luck with the ending of the school year. Everybody go out and enjoy the sun while you can still see it. Through the haze of the
everybody.
Canadian smoke.
Bye, folks.
All right,
folks.
take care.